Hey, what's up? I'm gonna go through a couple of records, and then I'm gonna do a video to support TUCO, who he's having a contest that has to do with if you could go back in time and listen to a record that was really important to you for the very first time again. So it's kind of like for me whenever I watch a movie and I'll pull out like The Toxic Avenger and somebody hasn't seen it, I'm so jealous that they have never seen The Toxic Avenger, and I'm like, or somebody that hasn't seen Star Wars, freaks me out, and I'm like, oh, you're in for a treat. Or if you haven't heard like something that's really important to me, and I'm like, I'm so jealous that I'm not you, you know. So I'm going to show one of those records, but first I'm going to show Corrupted Morals. It's a punk band, and I've been meaning to show this. This first one is called Chet. These guys they have this vibe. It's very similar to maybe what early Suicidal, like early Suicidal. So Corrupted Morals was formed around 1986 in Palmdale, California, and they were one of the original 924 Gilman Street bands. And if you're into some punk and that kind of time frame and era, you might understand what that is. I'm not going to go into the history of all that stuff. You can look it up on YouTube, and all the different, how it started, the labels. This is the first one. I believe the label was Turn It Around, maybe? I can't remember. But anyway, Corrupted Morals, fantastic. This one has like little snippets from the movie Weird Science with the Big Brother Chet. It's really good. And how I found this band was through this album by Corrupted Morals called Cheese It. And Larry Lalonde from Possessed, he was in Possessed, then he went to this. He was also in Blind Illusion with Les Claypool. This other Corrupted Morals is fantastic as well. You can get these very, very cheap. It's got some inserts. That first Chet, the represses, you can get them on pink vinyl. That's what this one is. This one's on pink vinyl. But that's how I found it, is because Larry Lalonde from Primus is on it, and I'm a huge Primus fan. And at some point, I don't know the history of it, but I know he went from Possessed to Corrupted Morals, and then he was on Blind Illusion as well. And Larry and Les are on this record, and you can really hear them on this. And they were more hired guns, I think, more than anything for this record. They needed a bass player and a guitar player, so they were able to fill in. But getting to TUCO's contest, if I could go back now, I kind of teetered on some albums. Like I was going to pull my Little Red Caboose whenever I was smaller than, it was before kindergarten. I remember my mother and my father dropping the needle, and they were with me, and I remember hearing the music come out of this disc, and it blew my mind, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I've got like The Hobbit. I've got The Hobbit with the book. I've still got all those old records from whenever I was little, and those, I spent so much time with them, and just as a child, your brain, and dropping needles. My parents let me listen to anything I wanted to listen to. I'd pull my dad's Cheech and Chong records. I had no idea what they were talking about. It was storytelling, and I loved it. I'd listen to War. I'd listen to El Chicano. I'd listen to Malo. I'd listen to all that Latin funk stuff, Sly and the Family Stone. Just anything that they had, I would listen to it. And my parents were really cool. They taught me how to, clean the records and all that. But if I was going to go back to a record that like maybe changed my life, I had always heard of Primus, and I had friends that listened to Primus. I was big into lowriding and all that stuff. So I was listening to a lot of rap music. I grew up on hip hop. I was listening to Two Live Crew when I was like in 5th, 6th grade. Too Short, NWA, Public Enemy, the Beastie Boys. My mother bought me my first Beastie Boys record. She bought me my very first like real record that I had was a Midnight Star. I'll show you guys that at some point. But, you know, I was thinking about all these records. I was like, man, I could show so many records that I wish I could go back. But this one changed my life. And how it did was here in Clovis, they had banned in the 80s and 90s, they banned MTV. You couldn't watch that stuff in this town. You couldn't see Married with Children. You'd had to get satellite or something to see The Simpsons and all that stuff. So a lot of my friends didn't have that. So what I would do is in college, I would go back home and I would record VHS tapes, because I would work at my grandfather had this little store, and I was a butcher at his little tiny store. And I would bring these VHS tapes back to my friends, and then we'd party and watch them and whatever. And after graduation, I took like this 6-month hiatus, and I was living on this junkyard, and I had turntables and I had records. So I was like a DJ, and I had a rap band whenever I was growing up. You know, we wanted to be in a band and this and that. We were writing all these lyrics about Free Mandela and all this and that back in the late 80s, you know, whenever all that was going down. And so I never really wanted to pick up a guitar. I never really wanted to do anything like that. And my roommate was like, you know, we lived on this junkyard, and we lived in a trailer, and it didn't have floors, and it was like winter time, and he had a space heater, and I remember the floor would crunch when we'd walk on it because it was frozen. We always had beer though. We were 3 months late on our rent, and we hadn't filled the propane, so we were freezing, you know. So I'd go into his room, sleep on the floor, and he put in Primus Tales from the Punch Bowl, and we were listening to that and tripping out, you know. And I was like, man, I didn't know they did stuff like this. I was used to like Frizzle Fry and stuff. So I'm listening to that, and then the next day, I remember it was a little warmer. We were sitting in the living room, and he came out and he was like, I want you to be in my band. And I was like, man, I don't want to, you know, I DJ, that's what I do. And he was like, no, check this out. And he showed me like Pantera, and I'm like, you know, I'm not into Pantera at all. But then Shake Hands with Beef off this record came on, and I was glued to the TV, and I was freaking out. And this is Primus Brown album. This is around 97, released on Interscope through Prawn Song Records. That's Les Claypool's label. I saw that video, Shake Hands with Beef, and as soon as it was done, I stood up, I went and got the record, listened to it in my truck. It was a CD. Listened to the CD in my truck, just driving around, just like blown away by what I was hearing, and thinking of that 6-string maple, his 6-string maple fretted bass. And I was like, what? And so I just went and bought a bass guitar and an amp, and then I showed back up, and I was like, I'm your bass player. And from that point on, my life completely took a left or right hand 180. I ended up playing in bands. My first band was called Smar, Some Mexican and a Redneck. And, you know, Ken would grow out he was a redheaded dude, and he'd grow out his afro and wear Mad Dogs and be all pimped out. And then I would play bass, and he'd play, you know, we were listening to Infectious Grooves too. I didn't know Infectious Grooves and Suicidal Tendencies, like the same guys. And I had always listened to Infectious Grooves. And so I start learning and seeing all this music. Fear Factory I was into, Machine Head, Rage Against the Machine was coming out. I missed the whole Corn Boat, which I'm happy about that. Limp Bizkit, I missed all of that. But I was listening to like Strapping Young Lad and, you know, kind of that vein, Seven Dust and Static X and all that. But this, I was like, that's what I want to do. Primus like combines all that stuff, punk rock attitude, funk playing, metal sounding riffs and drumming that's like progressive as well. It's like you can't even explain what they are, right? And I love that. I love subculture, you know, low riding and, you know, Chicano stuff and metal and punk rock and, you know, any kind of subculture I dig. And it was like, ever since this, I ended up in Arizona, started another band over there. That one was called Lumber. Then my buddies from Clovis, here where I'm living now, called me and they're like, we want you back home in our band. And I came back, and then we started a band called Dow. And then we played after that, and we started our own label. And then I played in a band. It was Smar, Dow, then Deer Tick, but it wasn't Deer Tick like the famous band. This was DEARTIC, like you're writing a letter to the twitch that you have, you know, like you're writing a letter to all this stress and stuff. It was called Deer Tick, and now I'm in Anon Zeros, which is the group that I'm in now with me and my guitar player from Dow and Deer Tick, and we do stuff together. But it was this, because of this, I went on adventures. I've met all kinds of dudes. I met Carl Thompson, that built me. He built me my Carl Thompson bass that is just pretty damn close to Claypool's. Go look it up. Carl Thompson's a beast, man. But yeah, I mean, I've got another Carl Thompson back there too, but it's like, all this stuff changed. Now I've got all these wonderful friends and acquaintances, and even the vinyl community stuff and the bass community. I've met all these people, and like, we're super tight, and the friendships that I've made, and it's all after I heard this record. And I wish I could go back and hear it again and relive that moment, because I remember how excited I was and how happy and rejuvenated I felt listening to this album, and the tones that I was hearing in the bass, separating everything out in my head, the drums, the guitar, all this crazy stuff. And this just opened me up, and I still spend lots of time with this record, but hearing it for the first time, I remember that excitement. I just stood up, bought the record, bought a bass. Life changed. Because of that, I got into all this other music. I met my kid's mom. Now I've got my 3 children, you know, and still to this day, I'm still meeting people and still collaborating with people and making all these friends. And it wouldn't have happened. None of that would have happened without this record. So, you know, I hope that kind of helps, you know, with explaining where I come from with that whole journey in music. And hope this, you know, TUCO is a cool dude. Check out his channel. I'll try to link it. I really don't do a whole lot with YouTube and hashtagging and stuff, but maybe I can do solid there. But y'all take it easy. Thanks for watching. Peace out.